Solosaurus, a podcast about one-player board and card games. My name is Brandon Waite.
And my name is Carter Mackey.
And this is episode 43, where we're talking about a game that is set in the best comic universe, period, Marvel Champions.
Are there other comic universes?
Not to my knowledge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think there are others, but their movie companies are slowly destroying them.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah. So we know this is one of our most anticipated reviews of the year, and we are very excited to share that review with you. But first, we are going to start like we always do with the news. And as always, the news for this episode comes to us from tablefor1.me, which is a site run by Frederik Shulz that does an absolutely outstanding job covering news for solo games and also some written reviews of solo games. So if you haven't yet, go and check them out at tablefor1.me. And our first bit of news for this week is that Repos Productions is releasing Last Bastion at this year's Essen Spiel. And Last Bastion is a remake of a 2008 game called Ghost Stories. And I have never played this game, but I have always been interested in it. It's supposed to be like a brutally hard tower defense game that was sort of an Asian horror theme. It looks a little dated now. Some of the miniature sculpts and things like that look slightly dated. The artwork still looks great. But now they're going to update it and give it a fantasy theme and call it Last Bastion. And fantasy tower defense does not grab me.
What? I mean, that's really treading new territory, I feel like.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But what does look nice is the artwork. It's a pretty looking board.
Yeah, it's pretty. It has like, the style to it is kind of subtle, but I don't know, it's just really good.
Yeah, I think it looks really sharp. I mean, I'm not interested in a fantasy tower defense game, just that's not going to hook me. But I do think this looks pretty compelling. So if you're at all interested in Ghost Stories and just want a different theme or can't find it anywhere, check out Last Bastion, which is releasing at Essen and then will also get a wider retail release later this year. Our second bit of news for this week is that Stonemaier Games has announced the Wingspan European expansion, which is going to make a lot of people lose their minds.
Yeah.
I love Wingspan. You like it pretty good.
I like it. I don't love it.
This is, for me, something I've been anticipating quite a bit. I'm ready for some more birds, and I'm ready for them to have some different powers. This doesn't look like quite the major shakeup I was hoping for.
Yeah, I know that they added the whole end of round thing, but have you seen many of the other card abilities or powers?
I haven't seen any up close. I know that, like you mentioned, they have that one new ability where you do different things at the end of a round. That sounds cool. I like that idea. I know that there's supposed to be a lot of new bird cards. Supposedly you could play probably an entire game with just cards from the new expansion. It comes with a new tray, more eggs, and some new goals for the round. That's the big one for me.
Yeah.
So a lot of the goals from the base game are like, have the most eggs in grasslands or have the most eggs in water. They just didn't feel that different. I'm ready for something to spice that up a little bit. The nice thing about this is, though, that tray is supposedly going to hold all the cards from future expansions, which is really nice. And it's about $20, $25, somewhere around there. It's really cheap. You can pre-order this through the Stonemaier Games website in November. And if history teaches us anything, it's that if you don't pre-order this, it will be 6 months or better before you can find a copy again.
Yeah.
So if you're at all interested in Wingspan, and if you have a pulse, you probably are at least a little bit, because everybody seems to be. It's selling like crazy. Then check out the European expansion for Wingspan from Stonemaier Games. Our third bit of news for this week is that Tristan Hall and Hall or Nothing Productions, which is famous for a game called Gloom of Kilforth, and for another game called 1066 Tears to Many Mothers, has announced a new game called 1565 St. Elmo's Pay. This is a similar game to 1066, but it's set instead of, Saxons and whoever fighting one another. This will be a game about the Great Siege of Malta. This is a 1 to 2 player asymmetrical card game with a war theme that covers a battle that I assume isn't covered often in games. The artwork in this game is really nice. Like, the card artwork for this is pretty spectacular. I'm not 100% sure it's my kind of game, but it does look like an interesting spin on the war theme without being a war game necessarily.
When you say 1 to 2 asymmetrical game, is it competitive with the 2-player version?
That's right. It's competitive as a 2-player.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think each person takes control of one of the sides in the conflict.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Knights of St. John on one side and whoever on the other side. I don't remember who this is about. But this seems like a pretty interesting game. If you're interested in that kind of theme at all, I know that Tristan Hall is supposed to be an excellent designer. Sadly, I've still never played any of his games, and I know I need to remedy that. I know I'll get emails about it. But I do hear that he has an excellent pedigree, and if you're interested in this theme, it's definitely worth checking out, I bet. It's on Kickstarter right now, so if you're interested, check that out. That is $15.65 St. Elmo's Pay on Kickstarter right now. Our fourth bit of news for this week is Oath, Chronicles of Empire and Exile from Cole Whirl for 1 to 5 players. This is a game that we don't know much about yet, but that name, Cole Whirl, is interesting because he has done Root and Pax Pamir, and both of those games are supposed to be outstanding. I mean, I know Root is outstanding. I love it as a solo game and as multiplayer, and Pax Pamir looks stunning. This is another game that looks like it has Kyle Farron artwork, and it's supposed to be a legacy and campaign style game where you can either bolster an old order or bring the kingdom to ruin. And that's all I know about it. I know that you're supposed to be able to play it solo and then play it with friends seamlessly. That if you play it with a group and somebody drops out, you can keep playing, which is unique for a legacy game. Basically, if this guy is designing something, I'm in.
Right, and the features are interesting enough that I want to know more.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something we'll be keeping an eye out over the next year or so. It's supposed to come to Kickstarter sometime in 2020, so I'm sure details will be trickling out about this, and when we find out more, we will share more about it on this show. And finally, our last bit of news for this week is that Gamelin Games has announced yet another Tiny Epic game. This is Tiny Epic Dinosaurs. This will be coming to Kickstarter on October 14th, and people just continue to go absolutely bonkers for Tiny Epic games. I think they're pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, the ones that I played, I've not had any problem with. I think they're fine games. I don't lose my mind when a new one comes out. This one looks like an affordable version of Dinosaur Island.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So dinosaur ranching.
Right.
Fence in dinosaurs, make sure they don't escape. You know, little plastic dinosaur meeples. It's going to sell so many copies.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So if you're at all interested in Tiny Epic games and or dinosaurs, check out Tiny Epic Dinosaurs coming to Kickstarter on October 14th. And that's all we've got for the news this week. So we're just going to move right into the review, which is for Marvel Champions, the card game from Fantasy Flight Games. This is a game for 1 to 4 players that is coming out in 2019. In fact, at the time of this recording, it is not quite out yet, and we don't actually have a firm release date for it. We got this as a review copy, and it should be coming out sometime in November of this year, but don't quote us on that because we don't have any kind of hard information. This is a game from designers Michael Boggs, Nate French, and Caleb Grace. And in Marvel Champions, each player embodies one of the iconic heroes of the Marvel Universe as they battle, cooperatively, if playing with others, to stop villains from enacting their schemes. This is one of FFG's living card game systems, similar to the Arkham Horror LCG and the Lord of the Rings LCG, meaning that this will be supported via monthly packs, adding more heroes, villains, or story elements moving forward. And so if you're at all interested in any of those other games or played those, there's a lot that you will find pretty similar here in this game. And that's speaking as somebody who has had no personal experience with those other games in this system. But that's just something that they kept saying, in all their preview material.
Mm-hmm.
So we will get into the play of this game in just a moment, but let's start as we always do with the components. And it's mostly good.
Yeah.
This is a card game, and as a card game, you would expect the cards would be good quality, and they are good quality. They're not blow-your-mind quality. They're not linen finish or anything like that, but they're sturdy, and, the card artwork is nice. I don't have any problems with it, I guess is what I'm saying. And that's pretty much true of everything in the package.
Yeah, I would say that. Nothing really stands out as like blow your mind component quality or anything like that, but all of it's just solid and normal.
Yeah, pretty good stuff. That has the dial trackers that they use in a lot of their games at this point. That's just one of It's one of Fantasy Flight's things. I'm going to say that probably about 100 times during this episode. The dial trackers are fine. They're useful. It's a good way to track information without having tokens and whatnot. The tokens that they do have are pretty minimal, which is one thing I really like about this game.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward with the tokens.
Just a couple of different types, easy to organize them and separate them and all that. And I hate fiddly bits for games, so I found that to be really pleasant.
Mm-hmm. And only 3 kinds of miniature cards.
Yeah, that's really great. Good on them for only having 3 different kinds, which you won't use that often.
No.
But they're there, and I bet you they add more miniature cards as time goes by.
Probably.
So if you're a fan of the Fantasy Flight Hobbit card system, just know that those are in here as well. And one thing that's interesting about this production, it has an insert.
Does it now?
Yeah. I opened the box and I could not believe my eyes. Normally, Fantasy Flight games have these just god-awful trench cardboard inserts that are designed to be taken out and thrown away immediately.
So that means this one has a really good insert.
Well, okay. No, that would be asking too much, wouldn't it?
Oh.
Yeah, it has a red plastic insert that looks like it has dividers for cards, like places where cards should go to keep everything organized, because there are several different card types in this game. That seemed like a good idea. It also has 2 little buckets at the top where you dump in the trackers in one side, except for one of the trackers, which is bigger than the others and doesn't fit in any buckets. And then the other side, I guess you just cram all the tokens in there. The problem with this is the game doesn't come with dividers of any kind, and the slots on this are so big they couldn't possibly hold cards. So basically, I have no idea how on earth they imagine this insert being used. And I checked with other people who have a copy of this game to ask them. None of us can figure out what they intended for this insert, but it's just as useless as the trench.
Yeah, it's interesting that it didn't include blank dividers to go in these kind of divider spots. I don't know, it's a strange addition.
It's a very strange addition. I don't really understand it at all. I mean, maybe somebody can come up with some kind of 3D printed divider that would hold the cards well in there or something, but I mean, at that point, just 3D print, an insert.
Right.
A proper insert for the game. You're just going to end up throwing this one away, too, which is a real shame because I felt like, man, they're really doing it. They're really taking a step forward here, but they're not.
Yeah. I mean, if you cut out a thicker, cardstock wouldn't be quite thick enough to use in these divider spots. But I mean, I guess you could fashion something to maybe fit in the divider spots to keep your cards a little more organized.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried, folks. I went on to Board Game Geek as soon as I got this and printed out these user-created dividers for this box. And God bless the person who made these dividers. They tried really hard. And they actually got pretty much all the information they needed from a game that's not released yet, I guess just from watching preview videos, to actually organize it well. The downside is that they don't know what dimensions the box are going to be when they design this, so the dividers don't actually fit in the slots. And then the way the slots are designed, simple cardstock is just not sturdy enough to hold up the cards that you place in there. It's a really weird choice. Not the end of the world, but just from a company that's known for its production values, and they are good here in every other respect.
Mm-hmm.
This is consistently one area where they seem to misstep. It's not the end of the world because they do another thing that I really like and that has been repeated in their games many times. They do a learn-to-play guide here and a rules reference system, which for me works just beautifully when it comes to learning a new game.
Yeah, it's a system they've been doing for a while, and it just works well.
Yeah, and even the learn-to-play guide, it looks kind of meaty here when you first open it up, but then it's not really. There are very few rules for the game to get started, and it has just kind of all the basics in there, plus several examples and, lots of pictures and that sort of thing. That's what makes it a little bulkier. I thought it was really well laid out and well done. The only part of it that was a little confusing to me is similar to our issue that we had with Renegade. I couldn't find the solo rules for the game. It took me a while flipping back and forth through the rulebook before I realized they really just intend for you to play with one hero.
Right.
It's just so out of place and out of character, not only for Fantasy Flight, but for makers of these kind of games in general. I couldn't believe that they only intended for me to use one.
Yeah, which is a really nice just approach to it, to not have to be juggling 2 different heroes, 2 different hands or whatever.
Yeah, somebody corrected me from a comment that I made in my top 10 list. Apparently you can play with a single player deck from Arkham Horror LCG and from the Lord of the Rings LCG. But my understanding is that is not the optimal way to play. And maybe other people would disagree with me here, but this is moving into the play of the game. You really can just play with one deck, and this is, again, speaking as somebody who doesn't have experience with those other games, I like it. I like playing with just one character in this game quite a bit.
Yeah, it was fine. I never felt like I was limited whenever I was playing with just the one hero. I guess I just didn't feel like I was missing out or like underpowered or wasn't playing in a way that was optimal. And it was so manageable.
Yeah, I felt that way the entire time. I just kept thinking, I'm going to find something here that doesn't work with one deck, or there's going to be something in here that's going to feel suboptimal, but it never came up. And so I never actually ended up playing with this with 2-player decks at once. Didn't have any interest in it because it just felt like it would make the game longer. And I found just playing with one deck to actually immerse me in the theme quite a bit more. It made me feel like that hero.
Yeah, I wondered myself, like, okay, well, I'll do it with one hero, and then I'll maybe add a second hero later. But after I played it with just one hero a couple times, I was like, I don't think I really want to add a second one. I don't feel like I'm missing out. This is manageable. I don't know. It's just good. It just felt right.
Yeah, and that was unexpected for me because one of the core ideas in this game is that you play your hero in one aspect of its character. So like aggression or leadership or protection, there's some aspect of this hero that you're emphasizing, I guess, when you play or when you build a particular deck. And so I just assumed that if I'm playing a character that has a protection deck, especially, if I'm playing that in a solo game, then maybe it would be underpowered and it would need to be complemented by some aggression deck or something like that. But that never came up. It felt to me like there was always something about my character's deck that handled some other difficulty in the game well, and just made it feel powerful in different areas and was still able to deal out damage when it needed to, for instance, to beat down one of the villains. So for people who are worried about that, because that's one of the things I was worried about, I don't think that's an issue here.
No, I don't at all. Because I remember when I played it, I couldn't actually remember if you had done it with one or two different heroes whenever you had played. But after I just played it with the one hero myself, I was like, oh no, this is fine.
Yeah, it works really well. And it complements actually the core system really well. So the core system of this game is you are going to face off against a villain. That villain is going to have different schemes that it's trying to enact, or a scheme that it's trying to pull off during the course of the game. If it can pull off this scheme, which may have multiple stages, then it wins the game. And meanwhile, while it's trying to enact that scheme, it's also going to be hitting you, doing damage to your character, and it will be increasing the threat that's on that scheme. And it will be basically powering up over the course of the game, making itself stronger, making its schemes harder to overcome, and giving you minions to deal with. And that is a really brutal villain setup. It feels punishing when you play against it.
Yes.
Not in an unmanageable way. You still feel like a superhero, I think, when you play against it. But the villains throw a lot at you from turn to turn.
Yeah, you never know exactly what's going to happen. But, I mean, sometimes you'll have kind of, I guess, smaller turns that the villain takes against you that are a little bit more manageable. But, man, there's lots of turns where they hit you really hard.
Yeah, and they can hit so hard because you can see what their base attack power is, but then they're going to flip a card up from the top of their deck to complement basically how hard they hit you. And sometimes there's nothing on it. Maybe it's just their base attack that turn. Other times it might add 3 to the attack, and your characters don't have that many hit points. And sometimes one of those hits can take you down to like half health right away. It can be really brutal sometimes. And then on top of that, they're putting out these little side schemes where you can still deal with the main scheme if you want to, and you need to in order to, win the game, buy yourself enough time to win the game. But if you don't deal with this side scheme, it's just going to add threat to that main scheme even quicker and complete it even quicker. And so now you really need to split your attention and do this thing over here. I like that because it's thematic. The villains in Marvel Comics are always trying to throw the heroes different curveballs. Mechanically, it's also very satisfying because that presents me with some very difficult choices. And at some point in the game, you reach this point where you're like, okay, I've got all these things, other enemies stacked up against me, these side schemes going on, but I've just got to hit the guy. I've got to hit the main villain and try to beat him, or I'm going to lose the game.
Yeah, it is really easy to get wrapped up in either just kind of building your own little like tableau area, or dealing with the schemes or things like that. But it's like, no, I need to hit them in the face.
Right.
I need to spend time to hit them.
Yeah. It's a great crunchy decision, and I feel like thematically everything about the villains works well. There are 3 different villains in this set: Rhino, Ulysses Claw, and Ultron. Rhino's pretty easy. His scheme only has 1 stage, so his games are very quick. Claw, his schemes have 2 stages, which simply means if all of his threat builds up on the first stage, then he moves on to like the second part of his plan, and he becomes harder to beat, and time is running out for you. All of that feels great, thematically and mechanically. They are definitely a good challenge by the time you get to Claw, and to Ultron is brutally hard. So all of that feels good. It would feel bad if it weren't for the fact that that is balanced well by how you feel as a hero. And I think mechanically, the hero powers are, for me, the most compelling part of this entire game. Because the way the decks work in this game, you have a pre-constructed deck that comes in the game. So they won't actually just have all the cards ready to go. You do have to assemble the kind of prescripted decks in the rulebook. But that's easy to do. Pretty simple to put together. And then you've just got this stack of powers, and every turn you're going to draw up to your hand limit based on what your hero card says you can draw. And then you're going to try to spend cards from your hand that have these resource icons on them to pay for other cards that you want to strengthen your tableau over the course of the game. And right there, you have a brutal, brutal decision every turn. Because here's the thing. All the cards in your hand, they're all great.
Yes.
Every one of them. They feel powerful and interesting and cool. So what you're left with is trying to decide, okay, like, is there enough time in this game for me to get the maximum use out of this card? Or is this the right time for this card? And what I love about that is, when you finish your deck and deplete your deck, it's not like all those cards that you spent as resources to pay for other cards are just gone, because you just shuffle your deck and go back at it again.
I know. And so, I mean, that's especially like opening hand or like the first couple of turns is like, well, this is an awesome card, but it's going to be better later, and I need to prioritize this card so I can get the most use out of it over the course of the game. I really like the tension in that system of like, what cards am I going to keep, and which cards am I going to use as resources to play these other cards now? Yeah.
I mean, you'll have some cards that are just like an extra action every turn where I can just tap this card and I can draw an extra card in my hand. And that's super powerful. It's expensive, but if you get it right away, like the Avengers Mansion is one of those cards that does that. Thematically, love it, right? Of course you've got more resources if you have access to the Avengers Mansion. It's expensive, but it'll pay off for the rest of the game. But mid-game, maybe it's better used as a resource, 4 resource cards or 4 resource icons is a lot to spend. So that tricky decision of timing and trying to decide if this is worth it is great for me. Plus, then you've got the decisions that you make with the individual cards that you've already played down. Like, you've got these ally cards, so let's say you played down Luke Cage or somebody as an ally for you, or Hulk. Usually they're better at either attacking the enemy or removing threat from the schemes, thwarting the enemy's plans. But in a pinch, you might really need to thwart using Hulk, even though Hulk is really good at attacking.
Actually, I don't think Hulk can do any thwarting at all.
Oh, yeah. Thematically, I guess that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But there are other characters that have that kind of... Obviously, they're better at attacking, but you could use them to thwart if you really needed to.
Right.
I've been in situations where, obviously, you want to use... Most efficiently, you would just use it for whatever it's best for. But I've been in situations where I'm like, I'm not going to survive if I don't tap this thing to thwart a scheme. And when you use your allies in that way, they start taking damage. And so they're going to die or like get knocked out of the fight if you keep using them. And so you're like, every turn you're thinking like, I've got this thing, I need to just use it, or else what's the point of getting it? But it's a cost you have to weigh every single time. It's just, there's so many little decisions that you weigh on every turn. And yet, even though they're tough decisions, you always feel powerful.
Right. They're hard, interesting choices. I would say the only time there'd be some choices where it'd be like, okay, this is obviously kind of what I need to go with because this fits the situation. But there's plenty of times where it was like, I need/want all of these cards.
Right.
And I gotta just burn a couple of them so I can only keep a couple of these. Yeah.
And then layered on top of that is the choice of whether to stay in your hero form or go to your alter ego form.
That's such a cool just like kind of ebb and flow of the game.
It's genius. You start the game in your alter ego form, meaning like Peter Parker, for instance, if you're playing Spider-Man. what's great about being in alter ego form is you can recover health when you're there, right? Like you retreat home to Aunt May's house and you can, I don't know, eat soup and read comic books or whatever and feel better. And it like thematically, that's great. And mechanically, you need to do it because the enemy is going to be beating up on you really bad when you're a hero. And the other benefit of being in alter ego form is when you start your turn there, your max hand limit size is quite a bit higher. Like in Iron Man's case, it's like much, much higher than the hand limit that he has as a hero.
Right. 6 versus 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's dramatic. And so all the heroes have some kind of benefit that they get when they're in their alter ego form. The downside to it is, though, you can't be fighting most of the time. Like most of your abilities require you to be a hero. So you can't be attacking using your hero. You can't thwart. And on top of that, when you're in your alter ego form, the villain's not going to fight you because the villain doesn't fight Peter Parker, right? He fights Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
But the longer you stay in alter ego form, the more work he gets done on his scheme. And that can be brutal. I mean, all it takes is one card flip where he gets like 5 threat on the scheme. And you're really behind because you stayed in alter ego form just a little bit too long.
Yeah, I lost one game because I got greedy and stayed in alter ego a little too long. And so that was it. And it was just like a 1 point difference is what made it happen.
It's such a genius idea. And my understanding is this is one of the things that separates this game from Arkham LCG and Lord of the Rings, is this idea that your main character flips back and forth. And having not played either of those games, I hear that they're great, but it would be really hard for me to go back to a system that doesn't have this because this is such a great idea. Some characters like She-Hulk, for instance, she's a lawyer in her alter ego form, and then when she hulks out and turns into She-Hulk, she flips her card over and automatically does 2 damage to the enemy because she, just smashes them instantly. And so it rewards you for flipping back and forth frequently. Iron Man is basically powerless until he builds a suit. And so you need to be in alter ego form to start getting cards into your hand so you can build it out. But once he is Iron Man, he has a hand limit of 1. Mm-hmm. So you need those suit pieces already in place. Those are such good ideas.
Yeah, and as you build the suit, your hand limit increases as you're a hero, which is just awesome. I mean, you feel more powerful and awesome when you have a fully kitted out Iron Man suit.
Right. And I mean, the downside of this system is it's random in a sense, right? I mean, you are relying on just drawing cards into your hand that are going to work well for you. And when it comes to how the villain hits you or adds threat to the scheme, that can be really punishing or not, depending on how the card flips work. One thing that is interesting about this, though, is that for me, the hero side of that is mitigated somewhat just by the fact that all the cards are good. Like, it may not have been exactly what you were hoping for, but it's not going to be a bad draw necessarily. You can always use something in your hand to get some work done.
Right, and it's really nice also. But at the end of your turn, you can discard all of your cards that you have remaining. If they're all just completely ineffective and you couldn't use them over your turn, discard them all and then just draw back up to your hand limit again.
Right, and there's no penalty for running through your deck quickly. So the only penalty is the penalty of not having done that much on your turn, right? Which is important.
Yes.
But it's not a game ender. I just think that is brilliant. And that's actually just part of a larger thing that I like about this game, which is that all the heroes feel very, very different from one another. So each hero's deck, at least as it comes pre-constructed here in the box, is they have a core set of their own hero-specific cards, and then they have their aspect cards. And the aspect cards are cool abilities. They're interesting, and they flesh out the character's deck in interesting ways. But those core cards are what really drive your strategy, I would say. And each of those decks feels so different to me. So, just for instance, I played Captain Marvel. And she has this card where basically she's drawing energy from space or whatever and charging it up in her fist to shoot out at an enemy. Playing down this card into your tableau gives you the option of spending some of those resources that you would use to pay for adding other cards. And instead, you can use it to charge up this beam. And when it's all charged up, you can do like 10 damage with this thing, which is a huge amount. Mm-hmm. It just feels like, that is what Captain Marvel's about. She's about big bursts of energy. She's about just power, and it comes through in the deck construction.
Yeah.
And like you played Spider-Man and Iron Man, and those felt very different from one another.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like with Spider-Man, you have the one where you like web up the enemy, which basically, if they're attacking you, I mean, that gives you like 2 free turns that they're not going to be at least hitting you. The other things will still happen, but that's awesome.
It's a fantastic idea.
And like with Iron Man, building your suit while you're in your alter ego and then just coming back. And not only that, I mean, most of the suit parts have a certain like ability they do, but if you have rocket boots and you spend energy to power and fly around and have the aerial condition, then all of those bonuses get increased because you're Iron Man and you're flying around.
Right, you're Iron Man and you're flying around, and like Captain Marvel has that aerial condition that she can gain too. It's not as crucial for her character, but it's interesting. Those things are thematic and cool and make them feel like the heroes they represent. She-Hulk obviously has to do a lot with transforming, into her form and doing damage and just raw power. Black Panther, though, is probably my favorite of the characters that I played because he ends up assembling these different parts of his suit over the course of the round, and then he has this card in his deck that he has several copies of called Wakanda Forever. And when you play one of these cards, you basically get to activate the special abilities on the suit pieces, and that's the only way you can activate them. You can't just tap them normally. You have to have one of these cards, but that lets you activate all of them that you have. And whichever one you play last gives you like a special bonus for that particular card's ability. It just feels cool and different. I was continually surprised by just how different the heroes felt from one another. I like that so much because without a hero that feels cool and interesting and different, it would just feel like you were getting pounded on by the villain. It feels like you're well matched. It's definitely going to be a challenge, and sometimes a very intense challenge. And I lost probably 50% of my games. But the times that I lost, I felt like it was because I didn't play well.
Yeah.
Most of the time. Every now and then it was because of bad card draws, right? Because luck is definitely an aspect of this game. But for me, my plays were averaging 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think mine were a little bit longer.
Like 30 minutes or so.
Yeah, probably closer to 30.
Yeah, that's not bad.
No.
It's not the sort of length where a little bit of randomness causes problems for me. A couple of games, I got whooped in 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And that was because I was just playing the hero poorly. It takes a little while to get used to that flipping back and forth into your alter ego and hero form especially. But once you get going, I think the game sets up very quickly. There are very few pieces. It plays in about 20, 30 minutes. And so if you have a round of bad luck, you just set it up again. I played this game at one point 4 times in a sitting.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's a lot, but I don't do that with anything else. That's not typical for me.
Yeah, it's a pretty fast setup. It takes a little time, I guess, to learn the hero and how they work specifically, but it's not too bad. It's not overwhelming. And I mean, if you've had a couple of bad turns and it's not going well and you still haven't lost, you could just start over. It's not a big deal. I mean, your deck is set up, just reshuffle it.
Yeah, it's not that much effort, I would say, to go ahead and do that. And so at the end of the day, what you're left with is a tableau building, almost engine building type game to a certain extent.
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, that's essentially how I kind of handled the different stages of the game.
Yeah,
but
with a lot of tough decisions and a lot of theme that plays quickly and sets up quickly. That's why I love this game. I mean, that, and I love the Marvel theme.
Yeah, you love Marvel way more than I do, in general.
I do, but you, as somebody who doesn't just love Marvel, also appreciate, like, mechanically what's going on here.
Yeah, it's really interesting choices. I like exploiting, like, you feel powerful, but really being able to exploit those powers to just get away with awesome turns. It feels awesome. Feels good.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
One thing I'm interested in, though, with the things that they're adding in the future, of how, if the heroes or villains will continue to feel as different. I guess mainly the heroes is what I'm thinking of. The villains, I feel like they could iterate on and make interesting schemes that vary enough. But yeah, I'm interested to see if the heroes will continue to feel as unique, or they'll have to kind of recycle more of what's already there or present.
Yeah, I think it will be, of course, harder and harder to iterate on it as time goes by. One thing that I'm a little worried about is, I appreciate in the core set there aren't that many keywords. I mean, there are some, but you look them up one time and you're good to go. They make sense. I'm worried that one of the ways they'll add some variability is just by adding more and more keywords as time goes by, and that becomes cumbersome.
Yeah, especially when it only applies to the one hero. I don't know, it doesn't feel as like fleshed out or like, I don't know, integrated into the system as a whole whenever they do that.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, that's one of the things that Marvel Legendary did that is a little bit annoying. I like that game quite a bit, and I've had it for years. But they just will sometimes add keywords in an expansion that are only ever used in that little small box expansion for a handful of heroes. And I'm like, oh wait, what does this do again? Okay, it's not a big deal, but it's just, nobody likes to flip through reference books, right?
Right.
One of the nice things about the reference book for this is I feel like I hardly used it. The Learn to Play guide was really useful, and I had to look up one or two things, but that was really it.
Yeah, it was pretty light on my reference to it.
I will say, though, I mean, they're obviously good designers, and I think they have clever ideas just based on what little bit they've shared about the Captain America deck, for instance. He has a shield card of some kind that is useful for using several of his abilities, and he can lose it. And if he ever loses it, he's not totally powerless, but significantly less powerful. If they continue to base their design ideas on what makes this character feel unique and special, they'll be able to push it forward. What I like so much about this design is the characters feel like who they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm hopeful because the characters in the Marvel universe are diverse in terms of how they feel, and so there's no way of knowing. But
right, yeah,
I'm hopeful about that. Worried about the bloat, though.
Yes.
One other thing I'll say, too, we've talked a lot about theme and what I like about this. One small thematic touch that I like so much is that in the villain, like, treachery deck that you have, each of your heroes has a nemesis that may show up during the course of the game and just start giving you a hard time, which is great. And that's just unrelated to whoever the main villain is you're fighting this particular turn. The other thing that I love is each of your characters has an obligation in their real life that can come up in the villain's deck and distract you, and sometimes really hamper you, at least for a round. It's so good. Like Tony Stark's is business problems. Like, here's this thing that comes up, and like, great, now I've got to decide, am I going to exhaust my hero for this round so that I can take care of business problems, or am I going to take some significant decrease to my stats or my tableau? It's a small touch, but it is such a great thematic little bit of flair. Because this happens to all the heroes, right?
Right. And I know it would make the game really hard, but I kind of wish there was more of them. Because there's only one card you're putting in there per hero.
Yeah, so you can play some games where it doesn't come up at all.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I wish that did show up more. But it's just one of those things that caught my attention and thought, what a brilliant little touch from the designers. If it's not obvious, I really, really, really like this game. In fact, almost everything about this game is good for me. Number one thing, though, is thematically, this game is on point.
Yeah, it really works well thematically.
It's one thing to nail that aspect of the game, but the other thing that makes this great is mechanically, especially for solo play, this is what I've been waiting for. I've been interested in Arkham Horror LCG and Lord of the Rings LCG, but my issues with those are, even if you can play with one player deck, it sounds like that's not optimal. It sounds like you really need to do some deck building to play it. I don't want to do those things.
Yeah.
If I ever did get interested in it, you can deck build here pretty easily just by switching up which aspect you want to give to your character.
I mean, it has rules for deck building in it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's got rules in there. I don't intend to use them, but you can. And so I didn't like that requirement for it. I didn't want to play multiple characters. And I think one of the other things that the games do is they make you generate resources using tokens that then you spend on cards. I like the idea of just spending cards from your hand.
It's a much more streamlined way of handling it.
Yeah, it's simple. That plus the fact that a deep cut from the Lord of the Rings universe, 3 years into that game cycle, is not going to mean anything for me. And I have no connection to the characters in the Lovecraft universe. When you start bringing out some of those weird characters that exist in Marvel that I've loved for a long time, that means more to me. And so I think this is, for my tastes and what I want as a person who plays games primarily solo, feels like what I've been waiting for.
Yeah, I would say that I agree with all of those things. The theme, or just Marvel stuff, like I already said, doesn't appeal to me quite in the same way. So it doesn't, playing with the eccentric characters of the Marvel universe, it's kind of whatever to me. but the mechanics are really good. Like you said, it's streamlined, which, I mean, just the order of play, learning the rules, adding new things, all of that is really good. Yeah, not having to worry about deck building, but still getting a really satisfying experience. Only managing one hero. Because, I mean, I haven't played those other games either, but just, I mean, with solo games in general, they'll have solo rules where you can technically do it, just, you know, with like the one character or kind of person there. But if you play it with two, it just makes it so much more like well-rounded. And I haven't done that with this game yet, but with one, I didn't feel severely disadvantaged or anything like that. It just felt really good and easy to run and very, very satisfying.
That for me is really the kicker. And that means that, you know, I can knock out a game quickly. And if I ever wanted to expand it to multiple hands, I could. You know, there's nothing stopping me from doing that. But right. I don't have to do it. And that feels very freeing to me. And so most of the game for me is good. There are a couple of things that I would consider bad here. And some of this is just me trying to anticipate what's to come. One thing that I would say is bad is the potential that exists for problems with luck of the draw and the potential that exists for bloat in the game. And those are things, I feel weird commenting on those, but like luck I have experienced. That can hose you. It's not often that it does, but I think it certainly can.
Yeah, it might just be chance. It doesn't feel as bad in this game as it has in some other ones that I've played.
Yeah, you know what might come up. You're always taking a measured risk, I guess. But yeah, every now and then there's just nothing you can do. The other thing is just, I feel like this is going to become a game where you're going to have a lot of keywords to manage and a lot of extra kind of fiddly rules as they fill out the character roster and all that. It feels weird to put that in the bad category because it's not happened yet, right? So they might not do that at all. It's just something I'm thinking probably will happen at some point.
Yeah, there's a good chance of it.
Yeah, I would say so. But that's really all I would consider bad for this game.
I would say it seems a little on the pricey side also.
Yeah, if you look at the prices on the FFG website, you're talking about $59.95 for the core set. And I will say, I mean, I've gotten 20 plays out of the core set already. So I definitely think there's a lot of play in here. And I gave this game to Carter for him to play for review, and I've been like itching to get it back to play some more. So there's definitely a lot of game in this box. But when you open up the box, and I know that this is not a fair way to judge any kind of creative work, right? But just looking at the contents of the box, a crappy insert, a handful of cardboard dials, and cards, $60 is a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird to say. It's not to devalue it or something, but I don't know. Just $10 cheaper for the MSRP. Seems like it would be a little bit more at home there personally, but...
Yeah. Again, a game is more than its components, right? And so if you're paying for theme and experience and creative work and artwork and all that.
I'm sure the Marvel license is really affordable.
Ooh, yeah. They got to make that money back somehow.
Mm-hmm.
The real kicker, though, are the expansion costs. So you're talking about one of these per month, and you don't have to buy them all, because it's not like you need these to stay competitive, right? Because it's a cooperative game.
Sure.
But if you're getting a scenario pack, right now the Green Goblin pack on FFG's website is $19.95, and the hero packs are $14.95 each. That adds up very quickly.
Yeah, it does. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you like it, you'll like it, and you'll buy it, because why not?
Right, but it's just going to be an expensive endeavor. And actually, I was going to put this into the ugly category for me.
Oh, okay, sure.
It's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just the nature of LCG games. I've never played one and tried to get in on that whole experience. This will be my first time doing so. I do intend to go in on this and don't intend, for instance, to buy a Fantastic Four pack when it comes out, because I think they're garbage characters. Sorry if you like them, I guess, but I don't. So I can skip those, and it's not a big deal.
Right.
Just save the money. But for the characters I do like I'm pumped about Captain America and Miss Marvel coming out. $15 is a lot of money, but excited enough that I'm going to try it.
Mm-hmm.
Time will tell, I guess, whether those feel like they're worth the money, but it's an expensive one. The other thing that I would list in the ugly category is that insert.
Yeah.
I'm just going for it. I love you, Fantasy Flight, and I love this game so much. But this insert is crap. So there it is. You're going to have to buy an aftermarket insert for this, or just take it out and put stuff in baggies. That's also pretty easily done, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Not the end of the world, just something worth mentioning. Even those things, even cost, even the insert can't dampen my enthusiasm for this game. I am having so much fun playing this game. I just want to play it all the time. The thing that I appreciate most about it is that this is a weeknight game for me. I come home, I'm tired, I want to play a game a lot of nights, and I'm like, ugh, I just can't. I don't have it left in me. I can play this game.
Yeah, it's definitely easy enough to get out, play. I mean, the rules aren't bad to learn, but especially once you've learned the rules, it's so easy to set up and get into it.
I think that's true. So this is, for me, definitely a stomp of approval game.
Yeah, so for me, I don't love it as much as you do, but I would still give this the stomp of approval just because, I don't know, it's just a great solo experience. And I mean, I feel like if you like Marvel and you like these card-driven games and things like that, I think it's a really easy recommendation. For me, I think part of it is it's easy to set up. The playtime is exactly what I want. It's challenging enough, but it doesn't like melt my brain down. I don't know. It's got a lot of good things for it for a really satisfying solo experience, especially the kind of solo experience that I want and that is enjoyable to me.
And increasingly the one that's enjoyable to me. You know, like I love big epic games, but increasingly I want to play a game that has a quick setup time, a 1 hour or less play time, and that feels thematic but has good mechanical decisions to make, and I want to control one character and I don't want to have to do a lot of prep ahead of time. That's a lot of I wants. You know, which is not bad because knowing what you want keeps you from making ridiculous purchasing decisions and having a shelf full of games that you don't play, right? I play all the games on my shelf. But even the games that I have on my shelf, it feels rare that one of them hits all of these notes for me like this one does.
I do feel like this is kind of tailor-made for your life right now.
Boy, it is. Yeah. There may come a day where it's like I have more time and I'm really just into stuff that's heavier than this, you know? I mean, I'm still into heavy stuff. I just don't get to play it like I want to. But from where I'm at right now, for all my people out there who have young kids, you know, or who are just tired a lot, Marvel Champions, it's your game. So this is a game that's going to get the stomp of approval from us, which means that this is a game that we both love and that we would recommend to you even if you only ever play it solo. So, stomp of approval game, go ahead and check out Marvel Champions from Fantasy Flight Games. And that is all for this episode, folks. Until next time, if you have not yet, please go to thedicetower.com to check out the other shows that are available in the Dice Tower network. You can find other shows about board games there that cover content that's similar to what we do that you'll really enjoy. So go to dicetower.com to check that out. The show is a member of that network. If you haven't yet, follow us on Facebook or Instagram. We are constantly, and by constantly I mean occasionally, posting pictures about games that we're playing or interested in. You can go on there and check us out. We are at Solosaurus Podcast on Instagram, and just search for Solosaurus on Facebook. I don't know what to tell you. You'll find us pretty easily. If you haven't yet, go on to iTunes and rate or review the show. I should say here, a big thank you to all the people who have already done that. I just checked today. We have 71 people who have gone on to rate or review the show. We have a 5-star rating, and I'm just very appreciative to the many of you who have done that. It makes the show so much easier to find.
Yeah, it's incredible that many people have done that.
Yeah, thank you all so much for supporting the show. We really appreciate that very much. And also, if you love the show and you're a fan of it, send me a message on Board Game Geek, and I will send you the geek gold that you need to get your own Solosaurus micro badge. We have one. It's flooding Board Game Geek, turning the whole site upside down. It's not, but there are a lot of them out there, and we're happy to give them away to you for free. So even if you don't have the 8 geek gold you need, just send me a message and we'll hook you up. And that's all we've got for this episode. Until next time, my name is Brandon Waite.
And my name's Carter Mackey.
And this is Solosaurus.